either, but I think that there's, I mean, forms of wealth also, I'm sure this is an answer to the question, but it's something I thought of in the middle of it. We haven't said yet, is that, you know, there's been an assumption that wealth is an individual thing, which I think is very interesting. Almost all of the discussion we've had has been premised on the idea that individuals or families that, you know, have wealth. And whereas, you know, in a lot of periods of history, even our own history, there was an assumption that a lot of wealth was collective. And I was thinking this when we give examples of burning things and destroying things because it's kind of, there's too much wealth around. And there's a whole history of what happened in Europe after the Black Death, which I think is really very instructive. Because, you know, right before the formation of capitalism, there's that brief period where the amount of actual or working people in Europe went way down. There was a labor shortage as a result of a third of the people dying. And as a result, wages went way up. And there was a massive redistribution of wealth to ordinary people around that time. And almost none of that went to individual consumption. You know, whenever you see those sort of books about calendar customs and festivities in the Middle Ages, they're really talking about that period from, you know, from about 1350 to maybe 1600, when there was a huge amount of wealth going to local communities. And what they did is they put it all into collective things. Like, you know, so suddenly there was like zillions of costumes for pageants, and they would just build giants and dragons out of wickerwork and set them on fire, you know. They would, and it was like every third day was a holiday. And in fact, if you look at those things, they were having all sorts of fun, you know? I mean, you know, on this day, like, all the women in a village would, like, form marauding bands and kidnap the men and hold them for hostage. And, you know, on this day, children took over the schools. On that day, they'd have cheese races, you know? And it was, you know, and there was a lot of you know, so in a way, it's interesting that this never even came up, this idea of, you know, wealth being this sort of collective thing that you just have fun with, and used to play collective games. I mean, that would be one vision of the way out.
So maybe we should now wrap up the discussion and continue. Oh, sorry. Let's do 2 last questions, and then we can just continue here until time we're allowed to stay and just talk. Would be like more private, like more together.
Okay, one final thought I have the impression that the discussion about wealth deflects what really underlies the underlying structure. And this is how I understand the psychological research is status. As Will Storr in his book Selfie tells us, it's all about getting along and getting ahead. Yeah? In every society and in every kind of society, it's all about status. We are kind of drawn biological to gaining status. And I guess in capitalist societies, wealth is just our measure for status. And this is why Adam Smith didn't foresee that wealth would be the measure for status, and this is because he was wrong. And it also translates into the potlatch ritual, because destroying things just is a way of gaining status in this society. So I guess when we talk about how wealth translates into power in our society, it's just because we have translated wealth into status, you know. This just is a thought.
Yeah, well, okay. The thing is, yes, one can make an argument we have a biological urge for that, but we have a lot of biological urges, and a lot of them are contradictory. Because, you know, the guys burning this stuff, that's an aristocratic society. You know, they had an aristocracy, and they had they weren't egalitarian at all. In fact, they had slaves even. Whereas, you know, the guys in Quebec, who I was talking about first, studiously avoided that sort of thing. And, you know, and they played games and did stuff, and, you know, where you could fight over status of some kind, you know, I mean, but again, if you're fighting over status in 100 different ways, that's the equivalent of none. You know, the idea that there is some need for societies to be centralized around one form of status gain is erroneous, as it's not true. I mean, societies can avoid that. And any argument that's based on a sort of biological drive like that, I always point out, it's not like no biological drives exist, but hundreds of biological drives exist, and they are completely contradictory with each other. So, you know, for every drive to, like, you know, show off and have people envy you, there's another drive to, like, you know, fight that off, and they're both equally universal. You know? So the question is, you know, which drive are we going to validate, and where are we going to put it? You know, you can have, sure, people will always compete for status, but that doesn't have to involve food. That doesn't have to involve anything directly related to means of existence or subsistence. They can play poker.
And there's also some kind of super-individual drive, which is exactly this capitalist function of money, I think, which is, again, this form you mentioned that we have not only wealth in the individual sense, but also some kind of over or supra-individual kind of wealth, and this is a way to produce wealth, which is so this drive money has because it has to accumulate. And I think this is, if there is something like a biological drive, then it's the non-biological death drive of money, which is in capitalist society the drive to, with money, produce more money by producing goods using labor forces and the means of production as capital.
Yes, so like, final thought on my side is there are all those drives, yeah, and I think it's okay. But again, yeah, this drive kind of to have more and more, and that we cannot stop. It's really putting a risk on our actually biological survival. Yeah, so actually, this is what is happening at the moment. The rate of species extinction. And also the climate change and just kind of changing weather patterns, it's going to continue. And the question is, yes, are we going to, I mean, can we survive, you know, or can our civilization survive the next like 50 to 100 years? And my answer is that we don't radically change